Welcome to Sewing Out Loud, the official podcast of ZD Sewing Studio. Here are your hosts, ZD and Mallory.
Sewing Out Loud. Hi, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Mallory Donahue.
And I'm ZD Donahue.
And today we're finishing up our garment sewing skills series. I really was tempted to title all the podcasts with a Z.
Yes, skills.
Yeah, but I didn't. So it's podcast number 5 in the series, and we're talking about fabric choices and how you choose fabric for different patterns. This series was prompted by Maple Stitch on Instagram, and
Hey, Crystal.
And she gave us this prompt. She was wondering, about some skills in garment sewing, and so if you have something that you'd like to ask us, let us know on Instagram. We are at ZD's Sewing Studio, ZEDESSEWINGSTUDIO. Yeah. And also on Facebook as well. So, Mom, what are some of the things we have to think about when we're picking out fabric for a pattern?
Well, of course, you want to think about what you want. And on commercial patterns, there's suggestions of types of pattern that they think, that particular style was made for. You have to think about hand, which is when you pick up the fabric, how does it feel? How does it drape? Is it stiff? Is it flowy? Is it going to flow with the wind? Is it going to stay stiff? What are you expecting this garment to finally look like? You're also considering the durability or not the durability. Maybe it doesn't need to be real durable. Maybe it's something sort of fancy that you're only going to do, ballroom dancing in, or, wear to a wedding on an afternoon or whatever. Or maybe it's your ginger jeans and you're going to want some denim, right?
And yeah, like the right weight of denim.
That's right.
And that's
important
pattern.
too. Right. The other thing, and this is pretty important, is color and the size of the pattern. Actual pattern that's on the and I guess here we can talk a little bit about texture too. Is it bumpy? Is it flat? Is it seersuckery kind of thing? There's all those different weaves and bumps or no bumps or smooth or shiny, that type of thing. But also the pattern, of the plaid or the stripe or what it, and the what do I want to say? The relative size.
The size of the pattern.
Well, the size, and we say pattern, it's the size of the design, I guess.
The design on the fabric, the chevrons, the polka dots,
right,
the damask little
right. It could be it could be a subtle texture that is, the pattern on your fabric.
Yes.
So all of those you have to think about. You don't want to wind up looking like you're upholstered.
Yeah. I had a teacher who called that. If you saw someone and they looked upholstered, she called him a couch killer.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I've seen that. Although, and I will tell you, I have used home deck fabric in a lot of clothing.
Yeah, you can do it right. You can do it right, for sure.
But, you don't make a constructed jacket out of something that's whimsical and flowy and won't hold that construction.
Yeah, there's stuff, when you feel that hand of the fabric, we did a lot of jackets at one point, and we carried some new fabric at the same time. And I had somebody buy a sweater knit, but we were making this structured jacket, and I was like, oh, well, this isn't going to work for this. It's going to work for the next cardigan,
right.
That we're making. But certain patterns are designed for certain fabrics,
right.
And there are lots of different names for fabrics. There's lots of really good books out there, and one that we sell is the Vogue of Sewing book.
Yeah, that's a really good book.
Updated
because
edition.
it talks about fabric. And,
a ton of them. And also, Becca checked out from the library the Mood book of fabrics.
Oh,
and
really?
It's from Mood and in NYC.
I don't even know in our personal library back here how many books I have in fact, but there's plenty in it. And it even talks about how they burn,
how they're made,
and how they're made, and how and cottons that are made on a silk loom, and all those kinds of things.
So there's the visual and like
Right.
textural kind that we've talked about. But then there's stretch
Right.
it to your fabric. And so you need to pay attention to what fabrics are suggested. And they may say something like for stretch knits
Right.
only, or for woven fabrics
Right.
only. And I have a story.
Doesn't mean that I haven't deviated from that either.
Sure.
Right.
But I had somebody give me fabric and say, make these things
Right.
for a show.
Right.
And all I had were these people's measurements, which looked not right to me
I
anyway.
remember
You remember
this.
this? She said, make these things. And I was like, no.
Was this the circle skirts? Oh, no.
They
Is that
weren't
something
circle
different?
skirts.
Oh.
2 skirt things have happened like this
Yeah.
in my life.
Okay.
But yeah, I was like, I can't make these
Right,
out of
out
this.
of that.
This is for knit.
Right.
And you gave me a woven or something
Right.
like that. Yeah, I can't remember the exact details. Like, that's not going to fit people
Right.
because knits stretch. And so
Right.
talk to us about ease, Mom.
Well, everybody needs ease unless the ease is in the fabric. And ease in the fabric would be, when you have lycra or spandex or even a knit fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Now, knits didn't used to always have spandex in them.
Right.
It was knit is termed how the fibers are put together
Yeah, you can
in
knit.
a knitted fashion.
You can
right?
knit anything.
In a knitted fashion, not a woven fashion.
Right.
A woven fashion is more stable and, will not move as well. Doesn't have the give. It's a stable fabric, where knitted is a fabric with give.
Right. It will stretch.
And stretch. And knits can stretch. Knits can stretch in one direction or in 2 directions at the same time. Same fabric, 2 different directions.
Yeah, this sometimes bugs me.
Right, when they say the 4-way stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a 2-way stretch.
I really don't think of it that way when it says for. And I understand why like a fabric company would label it like that, so that people understand it stretches all ways. But
North,
like,
south, east, west.
Yeah, I'm like, but if you stretch east, you stretch
You're
west.
stretching west,
Yeah,
right.
so I whatever. I'll
Right.
get off my high horse.
So you'll
about
hear
that.
things called a 4-way stretch. That means they stretch north and south and east to west.
But sometimes fabrics will only stretch east-west.
Right.
And they won't stretch north-south. Not at all. They won't.
Right.
They won't stretch. How are you thinking about the fabric?
Right. You're right.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I'm thinking of it
Those-
like from selvage
East and
to
west
selvage.
to selvage.
It will
Yes,
stretch.
Yes.
And actually, on woven
Mm-hmm.
fabrics, when you're thinking about going around the body, a woven fabric will give
little bit,
some
yeah.
from selvage to selvage. So you really want the fabric to go around the body in that direction also. Ideally.
Ideally, yes.
Doesn't mean I haven't changed it. I'll say that over and over again. And then, you cut things on the bias, and that's a whole other give and that kind of thing.
Bias is its own 5-episode series, I
Yep.
think.
It is. And I can't wait to do that.
I know.
I love bias.
But with ease and negative ease, we mentioned last podcast or the one
Right.
before about measuring you and then like measuring the pattern and pattern adjustments
Right.
and ease versus negative ease. So if you're making a shift dress out of woven linen fabric that
Right.
does
For
not
me,
stretch,
I
you know?
would do 1.5 to 2 inches of ease.
Okay.
Now, a person that is much bigger than me needs more ease.
Right.
Okay. So, just to give you some sort of reference, in a retail dress, I wear like a 4.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I need 2 inches of ease basically on, even kind of a knit dress. I would want some of that, if I had a
Right.
dress, say.
But don't be surprised if you measure the pattern and it's a little bigger
Right.
than
Right.
your actual body
Right.
measurement. Now,
But-
if it's
Right.
5 inches bigger, you could have maybe
You might have too much ease.
You might have too
right.
much ease
You
or
might
not.
have or not. And depending on the fabric, like I said. But even knits, we want ease because we don't always want them clinging to, our body parts in
Right.
places that we don't want them clinging to our body parts.
Mhm.
And sometimes you might have like a more fitted area of a dress or a garment. Say I want it more fitted in my bust and my shoulders, but I want it to hang a little bit loose on the rest of my body, which is a very common style and desirable way to have a dress fit because you're moving more in the rest
Right.
You can have that more fitted at the top and still have freedom of movement. But when you get down to your hips and your waist, you need you need to get in and out of cars. You need to sit. You
Sit
need
down.
to eat.
Yeah,
You need
yep.
to do all these things.
Right. Breathe. Whatever.
Right. So ease is sort of a relative thing on what fabric are you making it out of, how do you want it to fit, and what size you are.
Yes. So keep that in mind when you're choosing your fabrics. Something that can be on the back of a pattern envelope is amount of stretch in a knit. And I think when people ask for knits, this is almost just always standard now that there's this little bar.
There should be.
On the back of the pattern envelope, and you'll hold up the fabric to the little bar, and let's say like the bigger part of the bar is white.
Right.
And you hold the unstretched fabric up to the white, part,
Right.
and you stretch it, and it needs to reach the end, which is a
So,
black
so what
bar
they're
or
telling you
something.
is say they want 60% stretch or 30, and another way you can do that is you take 10 inches of fabric, and if 10 inches of fabric stretches to 15 inches, you've got 50% stretch.
Yep.
So, whatever amount is added to that 50, that's your percent of stretch. So if you don't have that bar, that's what's going on there.
And if you're ordering fabric online, you're lucky if somebody tells you that.
Yeah, the smart pages do, the smart
Yeah,
sites do.
but a lot of places don't. It'll be like very stretchy.
Yeah.
Slightly
Well, and then
stretchy.
sometimes you can ask them, or
Yeah.
you'll get a sample.
Yeah,
of
you get a
fabric.
sample. No,
Right.
that can be helpful. But I have a story from helping a couple people fit pants, because I guess that's like all I do now. But these were not the ginger jeans. I had a lady come in who we were fitting like some sweatpants to her, and they were too big in her waist and in like the legs. Okay. She wanted to take them up, and they were
Well, where
stretchy.
did they fit?
They
Any
were
place?
no, they were given to her.
Oh, okay.
They kind of fit her in her hips.
Okay.
She kind of had a big bum.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and so it was like fitting around like her hip measurement is what it would be to us in garment sewing terms. But she's like, these fit my butt. But they're falling off of me. If I hold them up like this, they're good. And so we took up the waist,
Right.
and I think we like maybe slimmed the legs a little bit too, just to follow the shape of her body. But these were like some stretchy sweatpants, right?
Mhm.
So she got another pair of pants given to her, like in the same batch, okay,
Right.
of these like gifted clothing pieces, and they were linen. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they were too big at the waist,
Uh-huh.
and so we took up the waist, and she goes, "Yeah, and let's take up the legs too." And I was like, "No, we can't take them up because these don't stretch." Now, I'm not saying like never take up the
Right.
leg of a linen pair of pants, but she goes, "Well, we can't take them up." And I said, "No, try to like move your knee
Right.
across your body, or like act like you're going up a set of stairs or something." And she moved her leg, and they stretched, like
Right.
comfortably tight over her thigh.
Right.
And I said, "This will not give."
Well,
If
and they
we-
didn't stretch. They
just-
just went over.
They
right.
became
Right,
taut.
right,
Yes,
right.
over her thigh. I said we can't do that with these. And this, I think, kind of relates to the story you told about your Dupioni silk tunic
Right.
lady. Okay, we are really used to stretchy fabrics.
That's right.
In the stores,
Right.
they're cheaper. They're easier for manufacturers to throw out there
They
and
fit
say
more
they fit more
people.
people. Okay. So we're used to a little tighter fit, I think, than like maybe people from from your age.
From the
From
50s.
the
We
50s.
didn't have the knit. Well,
Yeah.
and the other thing about the knits is the knits didn't have memory.
They weren't.
and
the
and
same.
so you
So-
wore a lot of woven
So
clothes.
this lady was not used to a pair of pants that was like fitting around her bum and
Right.
kind of going straight down.
Right.
And that's how these linen pants had to be.
Right.
They had to be like this.
Right.
And so anyway, it took a little convincing.
Right.
I was like, "Now wait, try and sit down in that
Right.
chair. These couldn't be any tighter.
Right.
These could not be any tighter on you. But if you want that slimmer look, like you need to choose a different fabric
Right.
for your pants,
Or never sit down.
or no, like linen to make my pants may not give me the
same freedom.
the same look or the same
Right.
freedom that another.
Well, the other
fabric
thing
would.
about linen is It wrinkles
Well, yes. And so
so
besides that,
easily.
yes.
You can't wear it that tight, or it's
Yes.
always going to look terrible.
And Sam, she just bought a pair of linen shorts, and
Mhm.
she was talking about sizing, and I can't remember like exactly what happened with these, and but she was like, I had to kind of I had to get a pair, and they weren't real tight around my leg, and I was like, yeah, because they can't be. She goes, yeah, because they're linen,
That's right.
and so if they'd been like a stretch twill.
Right. It's a different story.
Like we sometimes see. It is.
Right.
It's a different story. So keep that in mind when you're picking out your fabric.
Right.
For
And
your-
there's another thing. We talked about upholstery fabric.
Uh-huh.
So I think what people really need to think about, honestly, is you might like that fabric, but really, how is it really going to look? And how's it going to look on like the size of your body?
Right.
You know, is it too big? Is it too small? Is that what you really want it to look like? When I see a lot of people use quilting fabric in garments, and I don't want to look like a quilt.
I think the other thing that happens with the quilting fabric, okay, let's say it's really cute.
Right.
It's amazing.
Because it is cute. Yes,
It
or it
is.
has a theme.
Yeah, so let's
Right.
say it's just amazing. I mean, it's 100% cotton, and it's meant to be sewn and with like batting and then another
Right.
piece of cotton behind
Right.
it. It's not meant to be your skirt that
No,
people
it really
can't
isn't.
see through
Well,
to your
and
underwear.
talk about
Wrinkling.
and having no give
Yeah.
and all of this stuff. I mean, make a pocket and put it on your,
Sure.
or something. And
Or
I
never sit down.
the other thing that I think people go to is, oh, quilting cotton. That's what I know how to sew, and it's easy to sew. Cotton is easy to sew. Well, if you've ever sewn on really nice silk, no, cotton's like,
Or really nice wool.
oh yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many fabrics that are very nice and cotton isn't particularly that great to sew
To
on.
sew on. Yeah, it's not particularly
Right.
easy.
No, it's
No.
not. So get that out of your head. You
Right.
don't have to have, you don't have to stay with the fabrics you're used to. And you're going to buy enough fabric that you can play with it, that you can sew on it and practice a little bit.
Well, and so this would be kind of good, like, directly addressing maple stitch. Maybe this
Right.
is a place where this is a little different, where the fabrics are
Right.
looking a little different to you, and we talk about making muslins.
A quilted cotton is not going to be that comfortable.
That's true, too.
In many instances, it's just not going to be, and honestly, it's probably not going to be that durable either.
Right. So we like to sew with a lot of knits.
We do sew with it. Well, knits are always comfortable, and they're easier to fit. You get a better, easier fit with most
And
of the time.
they allow for a little bit of like, oops, messed up my seam allowance a little bit. It's probably
Mhm.
still gonna fit
Mhm.
okay. Or they allow for a little bit of that with your sewing as well as with your fitting. But
And they don't wrinkle. You always look pretty
Yes.
fresh with them.
with knits, I've had some people come in and have some prejudices about certain knits, in particular rayon.
Oh my
People-
gosh. My favorite of all is rayon and lycra together.
Yeah, I like
And
'em
people are like,
too.
oh, I just don't. And I'm like, why? It's like, I love the hand.
So
I love the, yeah.
I read about this. Somebody described. I like the way rayon feels, but I think some people don't. And they
Right.
described it as having a cold hand.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh.
And you know what else has a cold hand?
ah.
Silk has a cold hand.
Yeah, I was like,
There's
this
a lot of
is-
fabrics
and,
with
and
cold
rayon used to be called art silk. That's what
Right.
it came as. But my rule with like the feel of fabric and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
See, I don't like it when people are like, silk is the most comfortable fabric. Not always
Silk is
true.
really, really hot, everyone.
Well, and it might not. Maybe it's comfortable woven or knitted.
it also
one
depends
way,
on, right. It
or-
depends
or
on, are you talking about Dupioni silk? Are you talking about,
There's
let's go
silk-
on and on and on.
There's silk
Silk
jersey.
satin. You want to wear silk
yeah.
satin all the time? I don't. Talk about hot.
Right. So if you pick up that fabric and you touch it and you like the way it feels, then
Right.
it is the right fabric for you.
Right.
I mean, obviously it needs to be appropriate to your project, but don't let somebody tell you like all rayon's gross or something
No.
like that. because
Well,
it's-
and rayon is also, you'll see it called viscose.
Yes.
So viscose, I love rayon and lycra or spandex or viscose, or what did the English call it? Elastane.
Elastane. I was like,
whatever.
oh, blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just, pick it up and feel it, And then there are things like, we're not going to get into things like laces and
So
and
when she
stuff
said,
like that.
I'm sorry, let's go
Go ahead.
back because I
Yeah.
don't think we were clear about
Yeah.
the rayon and the hard feel or the
Cold
the
hand.
cold hand or whatever. Because when it gets wet,
Yeah.
you think you've ruined it.
Yes.
Because it's kind of hard, kind of funny looking. It's stiff, and it can even have like some wrinkles in it. And you think, oh my gosh, what have I done? You think you've changed its shape. When it dries, it goes back into shape.
My chartreuse shirt that I wear is rayon.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and it just feels gross. It
Right.
smells like sand when it's
And a
wet.
lot of rayon will say dry clean only.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Okay. I have no idea why. And if anyone wants to know what rayon or viscose is it is cellulose.
It's a wood product.
So it's a wood product, and they take this wood and they make it into like this paste, and then they spew it out of this into threads.
Right.
They spew it out of it like a dye into threads.
You'll see things like there will be rayon knits, there will be
Right.
rayon challis, there will be silk this,
Right.
silk that, and that's where if you really want to get into what these fabrics actually are,
Right.
get one of those books, get the Vogue sewing book or something like that, and it will tell you what a challis
Right.
is. It will tell you what a boucle is. It'll tell you all these things because you can have those in, polyester, silk, rayon, etc., etc., etc.
Okay, I know something I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So, Mallory, can I put a piece of silk and a piece of rayon together? Can I put a knit and a piece of chiffon together?
Well, if you
can
were to-
I do that?
If you were to go to our big box fabric store here in town, they would say you cannot put those fibers together.
Cannot mix them.
You cannot mix them.
It won't come out right.
It won't come out right, or it'll blow up. I don't know what they think.
Yeah, I know. I did. Somebody asked me that one time. They were like,
"Well, what'll happen?"
I don't know. I put these two fabric together. What's going to? I go, it's going to spontaneously combust on you.
Yes.
And
yes.
she said, oh no. And I said, no, I'm kidding. My suggestion there is definitely to launder it however you plan on laundering it after it's put together, because they will not shrink the same, of course.
Yeah, pre-wash those fabrics. We talked
Right.
about that. Yeah, so you can blend those fabrics. The pattern that we were talking about, pattern in terms of like printed pattern or woven pattern, a plaid, a chevron, a damask, something like that, whatever is going on there. Think about the size of your pattern pieces.
Right.
Too. If you've got this big motif that keeps getting cut up.
Right.
But if you have a fabric with a big old motif and you've got a pattern that's a bunch of big flat rectangles, that can be perfect.
And you might wind up like fussy cutting it,
Yeah.
so to speak. Just,
And-
picking that pattern so it will fall maybe over to one side or in the middle. I mean, it doesn't have to be symmetrical.
No, but I do think that this is something that I sometimes forget about and you remind me about a lot. If you do have a fabric with a pattern on it,
Especially when it repeats,
and you've got a pattern piece that's cut on the fold
Mhm.
or some kind of center seam or something, center that pattern.
Right.
I did that. I didn't do that. I didn't do that on like this princess line dress that I made a while ago.
Yeah, but you
And
wore that sucker out.
I
You
did, and it wasn't too apparent, but you noticed it and you said, now next time, and I was like, I'm gonna think about that every time.
Right.
And
And I think we did mention this, I think I don't know if it was this series, but I know it's been mentioned before that a lot of times with a beginner especially, they will tell you not to cut on the folded fabric.
yeah.
Take each piece, cut it out, each piece separately so that you're matching those plaids or those stripes or
Mhm.
whatever. Now, you don't match a tiny floral. You don't you
Sure.
don't match a gingham, something that's that tiny. But if you've got a side seam that's coming together with a plaid and it's going down like the side of your leg or something, it's gonna, or your back seam of your dress, it's gonna look pretty awful if it's not. Now, you will see this in inexpensive manufactured clothes. They don't meet up.
Right.
It drives me
Right.
out of my mind, but I won't buy those clothes.
Well, I think we've kind of gone all over the place with like fabric
Mm-hmm.
selection.
Right,
you
and I
know?
think sometimes
that's okay.
sometimes you're gonna screw up.
It's
You're
a
gonna buy
pretty-
something and make something. You're gonna go, this is not me. This is not working. Look, but you've got these resources nowadays that I didn't have 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, is go online and look what's fashionable. Go on Pinterest and hit ladies, fashion dresses, fall 2016, and it will show you stuff.
Well, and I think the internet has, made this all pretty like democratic. There will be people of like all different shapes, sizes,
Right.
colors, all sorts of different like sort of what do I want to say? Like things that affect how clothes look on you.
Right.
And they'll have blogs.
Right.
Or something like that. Now, I know the fashion industry, like mainstream, is dominated by like thin white ladies, but you've got
Yeah, but they don't always look that great either.
Yeah, well, you've got all these resources, and also, I mean, you can go creep on some ready to wear clothes. I see a lot of people doing that.
No, that's absolutely. You go into a store and you go, I can make this.
Yeah, and so
and
you put
I
it on.
want it in turquoise anyway, and they don't have it, so I'm going to go find something similar.
But if let's pretend, what's a trend that's been coming up? Well,
the pajama pants, right?
Pants, right? Okay, so
the loose-fitting printed pants.
Yeah. So what if you go put on a couple pair of those, and you're like, you know what? I can do these in a solid color, but no prints, or actually,
and
I look better in a print.
Sometimes it's kind of fun to be able to go try it on and go, this is what it's going to look like if I make it similar to this, or I do need a plaid, or I need a small. Maybe I need a less. Graphic pattern.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can kind of get the hang of that. And then as you make more
garments. You can always make it in black, my favorite color.
Yeah, as you make more garments, you'll kind of, get a better feel for what looks good on you and what you're comfortable with. So I think that kind of concludes our fabric selection.
And I hope it's helped.
I hope it has too.
And I hope what it really does for people is gives them the freedom and the confidence to do it. And you know what? If you make something and you think it's ugly, pitch that sucker or wash the claw with it. Nobody has to see it. You don't have to admit to it. And then the first time you make something fantastic, wear it out and go, oh. And if somebody says, oh, I love your dress or your top or your whatever, you go, oh, I made it. And it's the first thing I ever made. And then under your breath say, and we're out in public.
Yeah, exactly. But give it a try. I mean, with anything new that you've started, whatever. First knitted hat, first quilt block, first anything, and I've tried things in other sort of disciplines that I haven't liked, but I think this sums it up for our garment sewing skills series. But of course, as we continue this podcast, we'll get really in depth about a lot of things related to garment sewing and fabric in particular. We got a lot of those topics on deck for recording. So let us know if you have any questions. Get in touch with us on Instagram or Facebook, and thanks for listening.
So long and so happy.
Thanks for listening to Sewing Out Loud. For even more expert sewing advice, visit sewhere.com.